Good afternoon. This is Garth Graham. I'm with the STRATMOR Group. This is our monthly advisory angle brought to you by the Kris commentary. We appreciate the opportunity to be on with you, especially because we have a hot topic, and it's really a high technology topic, much more techy than normal. So I brought my colleague, Kris Van Beaver here. Sue Woodard, by the way, could not join us today. So I apologize that you don't get the Sue Woodard show, and I'll do my best. By the way, the irony of all ironies is that Kris Van Beaver, who is our resident tech expert here at STRATMOR, is logged in and is going to provide some great voiceovers, but his camera's not working. So there's just something, I don't even know what the punchline is, Kris, but you're going to have to deliver the punchline for the fact that your camera's not working. So at least say hello to the audience.
Hello, everybody. I could say that I'm trying to not convince you to go AI and it's futile, because I have my AI is futile t-shirt on, and the camera won't let me do that. It's being filtered out for some reason.
Oh my Lord. So Kris Van Beaver has ThemeWare on, and I'm actually, as you can tell, at a client because of the rare occasion that I've got a blazer on. So, you know, we appreciate you guys being here. We recently, by the way, and there's in the chat or in the link below, you can take a look at the article that we just have recently pushed out. And it came with an introduction insight from me that had a story in it that I'm going to tell you verbally in a second. And a great article that Kris Van Beaver wrote about AI. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to spend the next 30 minutes with you about that. And I'll tell you the thing that's we've gotten a lot of feedback on this article, and I think it really struck a nerve. And we're going to talk today about, you know, what the potential is for AI. And Kris and I both have some interesting commentary associated with that. We're going to try to give you some very specific examples, what you as a lender or vendor should do about it. So what should you do to get ready? Even if you're not ready to go all in on AI or really know what all in really means, we think having a strategy is pretty important. So we're going to give you some tips on that. And then some, you know, challenges of what to and how to approach AI in this crazy climate. So that the intro letter that I sent to this article is I told a story that I often tell. It's really a parable from the stage at various speaking engagements. And it's really a parable around change management. And I'm going to do it this way, is I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. And it's rhetorical, of course, because nobody else is on the webinar with me, so you can't shout out the answer. But do you know why the U.S. railroad gauge is 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide? And the reason it's 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide, it is not metric. That does not convert to any logical metric number or anything else. But the reason it's that width is because the people who built it used the exact same tools that they built for the first rail lines in England before they came to the United States. So they built it based on the tools that they had, based on the pre-railroad tram lines they built in England. So why were the tramways in England or Europe originally 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide? And the reason is because the ruts in the road were already there, and they had to build the wagon the same width as the ruts in the road. Thus, the wagon wheels were tied to the ruts, which created the tools which the people learned to use, came to America, and built our tramway. So why the wagon wheels were that particularly odd width, which ultimately created the railroad gauge. And that is because a wagon wheel had to be a wagon with horses drawing it, had to be a certain width so that they could follow the tracks that were laid out in front of them. Otherwise, they would break.
Kurt had the answer.
Yes, I saw that. Kurt jumped in. So basically, and probably because Kurt's been in the audience when I've said this one, but basically what this means is that our U.S. railroad gauge of 4 feet, 8.5 inches wide is based on the width of two horses' asses. So that is funny. And if there was a real audience and real audio, people would laugh, because I get a laugh on that one. So this is not a gratuitous joke, although, you know, you can decide whether it's gratuitous or not. And Kurt gets a prize. We'll send him a AI is futile t-shirt, Kris, to Kurt Raymond. But the reason I say it is that we as an industry do the exact same thing. We are making incremental improvements, but constantly held back by the tools that we had before, by the people who use the tools, and ultimately by the ruts in the roads. So we end up, like the horse's asses, deciding what certain advances might be because we are stuck in the past. And the reason I say this one is AI is one of these that may be so different, you need to rethink not the incremental of what you could be, but a real vision of what it could be without thinking of the ruts in the road. So I'm going to pause, and at least now since I can't see Kris, raising his eyebrows or holding a finger up, I'm going to pause and let Kris come off mute and say, what do you think about the horse's ass parable?
Well, I thought it was a little PG, but I'll reserve my comments for later in case there's some younger people in the audience who don't use that terminology.
Exactly.
Horse's hindquarters is the technical term.
Yes, exactly. Two horses, the horse's hindquarters. So there you go. So we could use AI to go in and replace in our transcript where I say ass and replace it with hindquarters. And there you go. By the way, we are today as a test, and this is going to be super interesting. We are recording, transcribing, and going to have AI summarize these notes. And I cannot wait to see exactly what it says about my horse's ass analogy. But we're going to share with you. So if anybody wants to reach out through the chat or to us directly through LinkedIn or send us an email, we're happy to send you the verbatim summation of AI's summation of our AI discussion. So let's talk real quickly about what we think the potential is, as well as what use cases we're already seeing for AI. And I think, Kris, if you want to sort of kick this one off, because you already cranked out when we talked about this, 3 acronyms that people ought to know.
Yep.
So what are you seeing?
The first thing that I want to say is when somebody asks me the potential of AI, some say the potential has no limits. Now, there are physical limits, but they really are limited to people's imagination. It gets more challenging when you start to see where it can be applied practically into business. If you think about AI in terms of the philosophical nature of AI and the marketing perspective of AI and the practical use of AI, we like to focus on the practical use of AI and get underneath the marketing of AI. The biggest practical use of AI to date in the mortgage industry is IDP, which is intelligent document processing, which is the recognition and classification of incoming documents submitted by borrowers. And then the IDE, or the intelligent data extraction, followed by a new application of the data to do things like improving your processes with the data that you've extracted. There are a lot of vendors out there who claim to identify the document, classify the document, and then get the data out, but then they stop. They don't take that next step, which is where the value really is, and that is to take that data and use it in your business processes to do things like eliminate that thing that we hate, which is the stare and compare components of the mortgage process. Garth, I'll flip that back to your next joke.
Well, no. I think I've got a specific follow-up. So we kind of introduced this concept IDE and then other IDP and IDE. So at least one of the things we're saying here today, you need to understand the elements that AI is already attacking, but also understand where it might be going. One of the points I think that Kris just made is imagine a world where an underwriter can focus only on exception underwriting, meaning the machine, the AI can say, that document is a pay stub. The pay stub has an income that's pretty darn close to what the income was that's on the loan application. And the reason I say pretty darn close is you ask a human, how much money do you make? They might say $5,000 a month. The pay stub is $4,917 a month. Is that the same? It's the same. And the AI could say, close enough, it's good enough. Now you got to rerun an AUS and do these things, but your automation can handle that as well. So that the machine, and bear with me, could say green, you're good. Meanwhile, you might say it's 5,000 a month, and it comes in at 4,500 a month, and that now suddenly makes your ratios tighter. So that might get flagged as yellow. A human may want to look at that. Or red, where it comes in and the pay stub shows that there's a big gap of employment, or it's nowhere near, it's 5,000 a month, and the application said 50,000 because someone finger flubbed, typed the wrong data. The reason I'm saying this is the red, yellow, green suddenly enables you to take this expensive person, an underwriter, and say, why do they only do 2 loans a day? Because they look at everything. And often they look at everything more than once. But if you only had them look at the stuff that the machine can't figure out automatically, how does that fundamentally change the way our industry might be? So I want you to make a comment on that, Kris.
So just because the data is recognized and can be evaluated, I think you can leverage AI. It's not being used today, but now you get a pay stub that says I work for BOA, right? Well, that pay stub doesn't come in as BOA or B of A. It comes in as Bank of America. And so if you submit data to automated processes to do verification of income or employment, you don't get hits. Well, AI can eliminate that and do translations. Say, I know that B of A is Bank of America, and I know when I go to the work number, I can translate that the borrower gave me on the application to Bank of America. So now I get a hit on the work number. We're hearing that there's a lot of misses on some of the automation going to these verification services. AI can be used to improve the quality of those submissions. The other thing I want to bring out is that artificial intelligence in our current systems for originations right now, we have a lot of data that's being presented in a dashboard or a pipeline, but those really don't take into account all of the variables in the originations process that could potentially move something up in that pipeline to be the most important thing to work on today. My boss, Michael Grad, talks about today's work today. You'd like to go in, turn on your computer, and it tells you exactly what you need to do and point out that, oh, by the way, this loan closes in 5 days and you just still don't have this piece of information. Well, AI could have done this for you a week ago and be harassing or working with the consumer to get that information behind the scenes, again, not tying up human resources.
And one of the keys, by the way, what's the difference between AI and automation? Okay, or kind of basic automation. In a basic automation environment, you just described, Kris, a human being business person decides the rule is, let's be sure that we start working on a closing package 2 weeks before closing. Or let's make sure that an underwriter grabs the loan within 7 days of application. You create a rule, an SLA. That is a binary item that you then hand to a person who writes requirements, who then puts in a system, who then puts it in a dashboard, who then creates a report, who then links to a file. AI figures all of it out because of what the data is saying itself. It's skipping good AI is skipping a lot of those binary rules where you're constantly trying to think through all of these discrete rules and discrete tasks. And it's saying, you should look at this because the only thing left on this loan is one item. So just clear that condition. Maybe that's the condition, today's work should be cleared because it makes the most sense to get rid of this one quickly. Or, someone doesn't even write the rule, the system or the AI begins to figure out from the data what the rules ought to be.
And that brings up an interesting point. When we assist lenders in evaluating technology, one of the questions we ask is, does a human need to participate in the updating of those rules as information becomes available? Or does your technology recognize that there is a change in the rule components that says, oh, I now know that every time this occurs, this is one of these other items that I need to add a condition for. Normal technology is codified or in an algorithm that a human has to type in and feed into the system. AI with machine learning on its own takes into its model and how it gets evaluated a lot of data, and then it makes its own inferences and makes the decisions or the paths in which it wants to take in the application different than the human thought about it in the first place. So an example of that would be, I always get BOA or B of A in the application. Therefore, anything that comes in with BOA or B of A will always go to the service that gives me the optimum hit on employment verification at for Bank of America employees. I didn't have to have a programmer do that. I didn't have to do a translation matrix or match all the potential synonyms for Bank of America. It learns that BOA, B of A are the same as Bank of America, Bank of America NA, for example.
I hope to gosh somebody from Bank of America watches this video, because we are literally mentioned them now 3 times in completely random reasons. So
just random.
So we've given a good example here around the processing, underwriting, that type of element here. But let's get into the top of the funnel, which is, by the way, the thing I always challenge lenders: if you're really trying to wring out some staggering ROA or ROI, rather, return on investment, you do have to take a look at sales. Not everything influences sales, but at some point, over 50% of our cost is up in the sales and marketing, the top of the funnel. So let's talk about that as well. And the example I think that's pretty critical there is, when you get the transcript today of this call, think about the fact of, one, how unbelievably accurate it's going to be of what we say, and 2, how accurate the summary is. Then think about, if every one of your if you were a loan officer and every one of your calls was being listened to from an AI perspective, how much more efficient would you be? There are lenders who are real-time transcribing phone calls to enter the data in the system in real time. That is happening today. Not a lot of lenders, and certainly not very, very common within the retail side of the business. But there's no reason that technology can't be done either now, if you're an early adopter, or is certainly going to become into the fore, which means if you're taking a loan application, you ought to be able to take the loan application without your hands on the keyboard. So if you're a loan officer and you're using your phone and you're able to talk to the consumer in real time and have it listen to the call and enter the information, that is an absolute time-saving wow. I don't know if you want to make any comment on that, Kris.
No. So there are, just like Garth mentioned, the exception review, you can, AI will not replace 100% of human interactions. Today, there will always be a human in the loop, or HIL in some cases, a human that will oversee the data coming out. Once you've tested and validated it, and you get a confidence level in your organization of how accurate it is, the confidence that the employees have in using that technology goes up. So today, I still read through every single transcription that gets summarized to make sure that the content is accurate. But after using it for a month, I may only skim it for things that stand out as incorrect, like numbers, statistics. The quality of the transcription is pretty awesome.
It's staggering, and I can't wait for you guys to experience that. So the second piece is, so you're taking a loan application, it's listening, it's recording. The other thing that's happening during this is it is scoring. And I'm not, don't get thrown off by the concept of a score and the fair lending implications, but it's saying, look, this person needs help in this area. The system is figuring this out. The AI is figuring it out. In fact, what we constantly see when we're using AI in our business is it will literally provide summations and action items where nobody said the action item is. Nobody said that. It just heard an action item. And you're like, wow. So it's the same thing here. The customer said something. And the next evolution, past just rekeying data, is to have the system begin to say things like why. And the reason I say that is if you were talking to a customer and you said, hey, you're buying a home, terrific. Do you have a home to sale? You do, okay. Have you listed that home for sale? Yes. The customer says, yes, I have listed the home for sale, but I don't think it's going to sell. A good loan officer would say, why is that? And the reason is because that is a critical piece of information that tells you how likely it is that this transaction is probably going to go forward, or what help this consumer might need on the sale of their existing home. They gave you the empathetic concern. They gave you something that said, I don't know if it's going to sell. The system in AI can prompt somebody real time, ask why. Whoa. Now, that's real bleeding edge. But there's no reason, if the data is not coming in, you can begin to get the soft skill prompts to a user to ask why.
Not only can it ask why, but it potentially can give you 3 or 4 suggestions to offer to this consumer in the conversation based on previous things that you personally have said to other consumers with the same circumstances. It learns and retains that knowledge.
So the other one I want to mention, and we're going to have to kind of pick the pace up because we had so much good stuff here, Kris. The other one I want to mention is every single loan that we do in the sales environment, part of it is the counseling and the empathy. I just gave you an example of that. Part of it is taking an app. Just gave you an example of that. But the other one is always the selection of the right combination of price and product based on the needs of the consumer. That is such a classic example of where AI could be beneficial. Because the AI could sit there and say, based on thousands and thousands, up to millions of experiences of similar scenarios where multiple rates and prices were provided to someone, and they tended to pick this one. That may not be what they called up and asked, but they might be better to not pay points, even though they wanted a low rate. Or they may be better to take an arm because they've already told you during the course of the call that, I think I'll probably live in this house 5 years. The AI, and a good loan officer can as well. I'm not saying that a good loan officer doesn't do it, but suddenly that good loan officer is constantly being prompted. Are you sure they don't want to do this product? Are you sure this isn't the right one? And then if you really become advanced from a lender perspective, the lender can begin to say things, or can begin to say, I've got a special product for you because you've given me so much more information that doesn't quite fit that grid, that normal binary, kind of 3-dimensional LLPA grid. I've got enough information. I can do a loan with a price, what we normally call price exception or special price or whatever. Now, the compliance and risk people have to weigh in on all these topics. But the point is, with all the data there, we suddenly are much more dynamic on what the consumer might need and what we're willing to do for them. You want to comment on that?
And you can have the technology serve up to the loan officer a series of choices that they can now look at a dozen different options versus 100 that the company may have, and it cuts down the time that they have to spend scanning through the things and offerings that they need to do, and can focus on the things where the loan officers add unique value. It's not just based on the data.
Big time. So by the way, I'm now going to tell everyone who's been watching for 25 minutes that I warned you it would be 30 minutes long. It's going to be longer, Kris, because we still got too much stuff and I'm on a roll. I'm super excited at this point. So let me give you one other example. We do customer satisfaction surveys on behalf of lenders with millions of surveys we've completed where customers say, here's what I experienced during the process. One of the most remarkable parts about that is, like, I'll give you one example. So this is what drives customer satisfaction, or an NPS score we focus on, meaning their likelihood to actually make a referral or recommendation. A significant portion, up to 30% of customers, say they're asked for the same information more than once. When they say that, their NPS score drops by 50 points. Just think about that in an AI concept. would that, how likely would it that you'd ask them for the same information more than once if you had the ability to always know the information you already have without scrolling through the file, without checking the screen, without remembering that they already sent you the pay stub? That, I mean, that's just one example.
And Garth, even using natural language to ask what's in the file, show me where it is, or give me this document, and it comes up.
Great point. So in other words, your classic, if you're a process underwriter, classic is, well, I'm going to ask for another bank statement. Are you sure? Are you sure you need that? So that's another example where suddenly we're like, much faster in the top of the funnel. We've got better price and product descriptions. We've got higher levels of satisfaction. That's wow, wow, wow. So let's talk a little bit about if lenders say, oh my God, I'm super excited. What should the lender and the vendors do, really to get started? And I think one of the things, Kris, you've talked about, which I think is a great example, is the literacy concept.
Right. I think that it's very important in today's world of AI, making sure that all of the people involved in your organization are both aware and at least at a conversational level with artificial intelligence, machine learning. And I think there's 6 things that are really important in becoming AI literate. One is leadership has to have an understanding that's important and foster a culture of AI literacy in the organization. That means investing in training programs, just like you invest in training programs for risk and anything else in the organization, because that's it, where another potential risk can be introduced into your organization. Utilize some of these tools and test them and try them out in a non-production, non-risk environment, so you can see where those things will benefit your organization. Create a learning culture so people want to know more and more about this. And what's funny is you can use the AI tools to have it teach you the things that AI does. When I first started doing AI, I asked it, what are the problems with generative AI? And I found 100 of them. The next question was, how do I get around those problems? And they proceeded to explain to me in very sequential order how you get good quality answers from generative AI, in spite of the fact that it's not always perfect. I will tell you now that my daily use of generative AI has made me things that I used to take me a week, I can do in a day. And the quality of my work has probably gone up by 50%. Those are significant things that time to market. My boss asked me for a presentation. It used to take me 2 or 3 days to put together. I can give it to him in the afternoon.
By the way, the 2 I'd say, and I'll do an explicit pitch. The first one is for Microsoft. And I'm doing this because almost everybody on this call and webinar likely has a Microsoft license already. So for Office 365, maybe you already use Teams, maybe you use Drive. The cost for the AI Copilot in Microsoft can vary depending on what license you got. But at STRATMOR, I'll tell you what we're paying. We're paying $300 a year for Microsoft Copilot, and we're a small company, So there's no way that the typical lender would be paying more than that. It's $300 a year. So
let me point out one literacy concept. When you've all heard of ChatGPT, it's a public open source generative AI tool. Very good. The problem that it has over Copilot, because Copilot is not as good as ChatGPT in giving quality answers, but what Copilot offers is that the data that you provide to that generative AI stays within the walls of your Office 365 implementation, which is private to your company. It's not used in other large language models training. When you use general ChatGPT, you've got to be very careful to preload your query. So I never place a client's name, data, or anything that could be decided or identified as PII into a ChatGPT query. I get it back, and then I have to go and massage it. I don't think that's the case in everyone who uses ChatGPT. They just freely pump stuff into ChatGPT, not knowing where that data is going or what's being done with that data. that's something that your AI governance organization is part of your literacy program to do that belongs. The last two things are leverage your external expertise for people that can help you become literate and establish a governance capability in your organization. And lastly, think about the practical applications that will benefit you. Forget all the hype that's out there in the market that AI is going to be cleaning your carpets and doing any of the things that these guys make it up. It can do a lot of things, but let's focus on what can AI do today for the mortgage industry and make you more efficient, more effective, and optimize your use of AI in smaller pieces to actually move you down the AI lifecycle. I've heard a lot of our lenders talk about being not fast followers, but slow followers, but on very specific things.
Yeah, by the way, I gave you a pitch for Microsoft. Microsoft's $300 a year. I'll also do a pitch for STRATMOR and Kris, which is, and by the way, it is more expensive than $300 a year, but we certainly can help you with everything we just described. We can help you with the literacy, the readiness, the risk-related pieces, and that's what we're frankly doing with lenders and vendors right now. We've actually put out a couple vendors recently have put out some press releases on some work that we've done with them, where we've analyzed the way in which they're using AI, the way in which their solution has gone to market for exactly this reason. So we're happy
and to help them put their marketing in the right context to not oversell the AI. Because when you do that, you start to dilute the value of AI to the other vendors who are doing AI things correctly. I'll give you a really quick example. When the Amazon Go stores, you've been to the airport and you walk in, put your card in, you go pick up some snacks and you walk out and you don't ever talk to a person. Theoretically, it's supposed to be all those cameras looking. It was 1,000 people in India watching those cameras, not any AI technology being used, and they got caught. So that also dilutes the other companies that are truly using AI and camera vision to do those types of things. So we help lenders make decisions by peeling back the layers of the technology and having the vendors show their capabilities rather than just talk about them in the marketing speak.
Yeah, by the way, after we finish here, Kris, we're going to have to be sure to respond to some of the questions or
Sure.
Make sure to flag that. We've got a boatload of them in the chat there coming in. So we'll go ahead and even if we have to, we'll send you responses outside of the chat if we run out of time. By the way, Kris and I, you get the big advantage. We have unique names, so it's super easy to find us on LinkedIn, Kris Van Beaver or Garth Graham, or you can find us on the STRATMOR website, or go to the STRATMOR website and hit to contact us and just say was on the webinar and had a question. Any way you get us a question, we'll try to answer it. So the other thing I just want to comment on, and this will probably wrap it up here, but anytime you're looking at major change, and I'm back to my horse's ass analogy, is really it's a function of change for people, process, and technology. It is not just technology, and AI is no different. We've given you a boatload of examples. Think of every example we've given you and think, how does this get implemented by a person? And it's a wow. The person's got to be trained. They got to understand it. They have to embrace it. The lender better measure it if they really think it's important. We should celebrate victories. Maybe you want to create a dashboard with gamification. So who's the highest user and what are the impacts for them? The people need to accept it and ultimately be drivers of change, because that's a big, big factor on it. The second is obviously the process. And we see this one constantly. If you rolled out an AI, like the example we gave you, that has an amazing thing that can automate a red, yellow, green, and an underwriting process, unbelievable, absolute wow. And if the underwriter, then the person, has the process of doing exactly what they normally do, review every single document, you have a people failure at that point, and you have a process failure, because really they ought to be cued to just be looking at the exception. So any of these changes are really changes in people, process, and technology, and we strongly encourage you to think about all three. So Kris, I don't know if you have
I'll make one
comment
yep. on that. Even though technology is complex, it is the easiest part of those three to change. It is very deterministic. I can know how to install the software. I know how to configure it. I know how to run it. What we have trouble with is people wanting to pave a cow path. You take a brand new emerging technology and you try to bend it and force fit it into your square hole that says, I do it this way, I've always done it this way, and I'm always going to do it this way. If that's the true commitment at the leadership level, then I'm going to advise you to not invest in any technology. Invest in your people, train them. Technology is not an answer for that environment. So you could have a perfect technology with perfect performance, but if you don't have a plan to have people and process change and adopt it and leverage it before you start to tune it to your organization, you'll lose all the benefits of those bells and whistles and economies of scale that a new technology might offer your organization.
Yeah. So, but if you manage to nail this change management, people, process, and technology, I think the ROI here is pretty significant. We constantly are talking about, you know, $10,000 to originate a loan. Significant amount of it is in sales. At some point, the advent of AI technology and the ability of us to engage it really can drive out some ROI and lower expense, or drive out ROI in additional loans. You know, why does the average loan officer only do 3 to 4 loans a month? If they were super efficient, could they do 8? Could they spend twice as much time selling, making phone calls, talking to realtors, adding value? Absolutely. The average underwriter is 2 loans a day. Why is it 2? Why isn't it 4, 6, 8? It can be if you embrace the potential use of technology, and that's major ROI. But you also have to engage the people and process necessary to get it done. So I think we've wrapped up. Kris, did you have any other final comment?
No. You want to take a couple of questions? Do we have time for that?
Sure. I haven't even looked at it. I think, yeah, I would never put PII into Chat GPT. I think, Kris, your point, which Dan asked, is the question about saying anything that's private, whether it's personally identifiable information or not, is not really the point. It's confidential information.
Confidential, proprietary,
yeah.
Anything that has to do with your secret sauce doesn't belong in a publicly trained large language model, because it's going to get picked up and used by somebody else.
Yeah, which by the way means, an example is, you take a pay stub and you drag it in there and say, what's the income on this pay stub? Well, that pay stub probably has social security numbers and other things on it too. So you did just put PII into a potential public language model. That's not good. So that's another governance and understanding that people understand exactly how it is. So I think those are, somebody comment was, I just closed on the sale of a property and I was asked at the closing table for same information on multiple forms. Yeah, and you're somebody probably in our industry who's frustrated. So imagine someone who is not. So, oh wow, there's a bunch of these. So a bunch of you asked for the transcript, so we will make sure to get that out to everybody. And I think we have the user. I think we have the usernames of anybody who logged in. Maria or Robbie, is that right? So we can just send the transcript to people, or do we? Or
we
do they
can
need
do that.
X?
We
can't X. Oh, that's awesome. Woo! Okay, so if you're watching on YouTube, you have to go into the YouTube comments or send us a link separately, and we'll send you the transcript for this. And the summation. The summation's the power. It's actually is going to be more interesting than the actual transcript, because the summation is the AI's interpretation of what we said. And I can't wait to hear what they have to say about my jokes. So we appreciate your being here. We think it's a pretty exciting topic, and we look forward to talking with you if you're interested in talking about it more. By the way, there's going to be 4 of us at the ICE conference next week. So if you're watching this the week of the 4th of March, we're going to be in Vegas next week, and we'd be happy to engage with you there if you want to reach out and set up some time. So I appreciate everyone being on.
For any Star Trek fans, resistance is futile. AI is here, and it's coming.
I cannot wait. I cannot believe we missed the t-shirt, Kris. So, you know, maybe
we'll send everybody a photo of the t-shirt. How's that?
There you go. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be on, and we'll talk with you again next month. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.